The Nimitz class aircraft carriers are floating air armies. I'm sure an aircraft carrier of this class has more air power than your entire country combined. But the reality is that they are what they are. Thanks to the tremendous coordination of the 6,000 workers on board, the work of absolutely everyone converges on the planes taking off and landing successfully. Today we will explore the crucial areas of an aircraft carrier, where everything is coordinated. The organization of thousands of people is disproportionate for what we've all seen happen countless times. I'm going to give you a tour of 8 different areas of the ship from where the operations of the aircraft carrier are organized. I've seen dozens of videos on the internet and this is not explained correctly. We're gonna go from the top of the island down and then go back up. Finally, talking about the deck and everything that happens on it. The island, the structure protruding from the surface of Nimitz-class aircraft carriers, is designed to be as small as possible. As you can imagine, since the deck is a takeoff and landing runway. The optimal would be not to have an island, but there are tasks that need to be done from height. At the top of the island, we have the primary flight control, or commonly known as pre-fly. This is where approaching, taking off, and landing aircraft operations are controlled. They could be considered the air traffic controllers of the deck and ship's vicinity up to 5 nautical miles. This part is located at the top of the island to have a good visibility, both on the deck and in the takeoffs and landings. While observing all this, they note which planes are in the air and their remaining fuel, too. This way, if they need to send a plane to wait in the air, they can determine which one has the most fuel to circle longer. In addition, they also take care of noting the weights of each aircraft that is going to land to introduce them into the stop cables. In the second video, we discussed the cables and saw that when a plane hooks a cable, a gas is compressed. But it is necessary to know the weight of each plane to adjust the strength of the cables. Additionally, they can deactivate any catapult if they notice something unusual that the people on deck have missed, since they have visibility over the entire deck. Here in the pre-fly, the air boss is in charge, with the help of the mini-boss, but there are also more people helping them. The air boss must have served as a naval pilot for years to understand the perspective of the pilots under his command. Could it be said that he is the supervisor of all operations on the aircraft carrier's deck? And that if everyone does their job well, he shouldn't have to intervene for practically anything. Right below the pre-fly is the bridge. This is the room from which the aircraft carrier's rudder and power are managed. Here the ship's captain is in command. This person must also have been a pilot for several years and is the one who selects the course of the ship to start operations. Just below the bridge is the flag bridge, where the admiral is located, as mentioned in the first video of this series. Aircraft carriers always travel in combat battalions, never alone. The admiral, who resides within the aircraft carrier and oversees its operations, commands the entire battalion. From the flag bridge, it's important to say that both the bridge and the flag bridge have practically nothing to do with the operations of the planes. A few floors below, at deck level, is the flight deck control. If you notice, it's right where these 2 windows meet. This is a room from where the deck operations are monitored and organized. To do this, they use the Ouija board, which is a scale replica of the aircraft carrier, in which the movements of the aircraft on deck are accurately mimicked. Nuts, bolts, and other indicators on the aircraft highlight important considerations. A purple nut represents something related to fuel, depending on its orientation, lying down or standing up. It will mean that this plane needs fuel, or that that plane is refueling at that moment, since in reality, both things have to do with fuel, but it is different to need fuel than to be refueling fuel. For instance, during a fire, the refueling aircraft is at great risk, because it has fuel. However, the other one does not, because it does not have fuel. Well then, nuts and pins provide information about aircraft status, such as impending departure, engine status, or ongoing maintenance. And if you're wondering why this system of nuts and bolts is still being used, it's because a digital way to do this efficiently has not yet been found. But it is true that the new Gerald Ford class aircraft carriers are going to have a touch screen. They have seemingly developed software that makes implementation worthwhile, rather than using hardware components. To enable efficient communications, various parts of the aircraft carrier have been named, ensuring everyone on board knows them. Thus, when someone indicates over the radio that an aircraft is going to park in this area, just by saying its name, for example, the yard, everyone knows which area of the aircraft carrier they are referring to. Here at the flight deck control, they are aided by a television camera that records real-time events on deck. In fact, all landings are recorded, and that's why all aircraft carrier accidents are recorded. The aircraft handling officer, who is responsible for all aircraft movement on deck, is in charge of the flight deck control. He determines the parking spot for landing aircraft and the catapult assignment for planes taking off. This may seem trivial, but it's not. Not at all. You must take into account the entire organization of the day, knowing that parked planes cannot hinder the operations of the planes that are moving. Maybe at a certain moment, the deck is practically empty of aircraft, but half an hour later, dozens of landings are carried out to later make some launches, and that's why you can't park the aircraft wherever you want. Everything must be planned ahead of time. At this point, you might think that the job of the aircraft handling officer is the same as that of the air boss, who is up in the pre-fly, but it's not. The air boss. In terms of deck operations, he should only have to supervise, intervening only if necessary, but the one who should organize everything is the aircraft handling officer. Although, of course, both are in contact, the air boss can intervene if something is not going well, as he is ultimately responsible for all operations. Further down under the deck is the Carrier Air Traffic Control Center. It's literally the air control center. They are the air controllers of the aircraft in the area. Their control area starts from about 5 nautical miles around the aircraft carrier to 50, because in the 5 nautical miles around the carrier, the air boss has air control. From the KTCC aircraft are given directions to reach their targets and to return back to the aircraft carrier. They also monitor for enemies entering the airspace and are responsible for issuing warnings if it occurs. It's a sensitive area to record due to confidential information on the screens. Based on my experience on the aircraft carrier, it was the only place with recording restrictions. That's why the screens are pixelated in the photos you find on the internet. The Combat Information Center is the place where real-time radar information is analyzed to determine whether what is being detected is an enemy or not. This room is located right next to the Air Control Center. And with the information collected and analyzed, guidelines are given to the controllers to guide the aircraft. If an unidentified aircraft is detected and determined to require interception, the Combat Information Center members are responsible for making that decision. They communicate this to the air traffic controllers, and they give instructions to the fighters to reach the aircraft that needs to be intercepted. A little further down, 3 levels below deck, is the hangar. This area occupies a large percentage of the entire volume of the ship. It goes from bow to stern, with dimensions of 209 meters in length, 34 meters in width, and 8 meters in height. This is the part where most of the aircraft are stored and maintenance tasks are carried out. The hangar is divided by 3 sliding doors that can be closed to separate it into 3 sections. For safety, in case, for example, there was a fire so that it would not spread so fast, or even due to floods. Moreover, the hangar hosts numerous activities to entertain staff and maintain high morale. We will cover this in the final video of the aircraft carrier series. Since space is so tremendously limited on an aircraft carrier, the embarked aircraft must have the ability to fold their wings to take up as little space as possible. For that reason, not a bit of space is wasted. Look at all the fuel tanks hanging from the ceiling. At the back of the hangar is the engine testing area, where there are benches to test them and see that after a repair, the engines are still working correctly. The hangar connects to the deck via 4 giant elevators. Each one of them can simultaneously lift 2 aircraft the size of the F-18 Super Hornet. And now is when we get to the deck, the most fascinating place a human being can be. On deck during operations, the sensation is extreme. Can you feel the noise of the planes taking off? Yes, the noise is so loud that it stops being something you hear and becomes something you feel. You can also feel the whip of the catapult as it releases a plane, the hot air from the engines, and the smell. Really, the smell of kerosene is impressive. Sometimes gusts of air would come from a plane that was taking off, and you really couldn't breathe that air. This is the reason why some members of the ship decide to go up on deck with their nose and mouth protected. The real smell was garomas. Oh my god, what did that smell like? Every day before starting operations, an activity known as Foreign Object Debris Walkdown is carried out. Foreign Object Debris stands for Foreign Object Debris, which would translate as small external object. Basically, it involves hundreds of people getting together on deck and sweeping the ship from front to back or from back to front to make sure there is no object that could get into any engine once operations begin, as that would cost millions of dollars and possibly some lives. To start operations, every day the Airbus from the pre-fly with a loudspeaker gives the same speech to officially start operations. The ship positions itself against the wind and the show begins. As incredible as it may seem, the first aircraft to take off is always a helicopter that stays parallel to the flying ship. In the event of a plane accident requiring water rescue, these are the designated rescuers responsible for the operation. But I've realized that their job is so incredible that it's worth making a video exclusively about them, so that will be the next video. Once the helicopter is in the air, takeoffs or even landings can begin. The day I went to the aircraft carrier, I was invited by NATO, as you already know, which means that those days the aircraft carrier was under their command. They were conducting exercises with other countries in the Adriatic Sea. With Romania, if I remember correctly, which means that day there were fighters leaving for Romania and they wouldn't return until days later. The landings are not from planes that have recently taken off. It's possible that no plane has taken off yet, but planes that have been out for several days are landing. So, was a real mission being carried out that day? However, there is another thing known as cyclic operations, which consists of several planes going out to do forced volters. This involves touching the runway and taking off again, either immediately or after a complete landing. When cyclic operations occur, there is no fixed plan on what is going to be done that day. A pilot may land in a loop until achieving 2 perfect consecutive landings, which cannot be predicted when it will occur. Often, the deck is arranged in a way that renders this entire section of the aircraft carrier inoperable, allowing aircraft to park there. However, if this ship section is operational, it's possible to carry out landings and takeoffs practically at the same time, as these 2 catapults on the right side of the ship would be used for takeoffs and the landing strip for landings. Can planes land and take off simultaneously? But in case only the catapults on the left are in operation, that's when you have to take turns of multiple takeoffs and turns of multiple landings. In these cases, the last pilot to land always decides to make a pass. But are they given permission to do this, or later, when they land, are they scolded? In the Top Gun movie, they get upset with Maverick for doing this, in case you don't recall. That's what we asked an F-18 pilot on Carrier Day.
So people will do flybys, so yeah, you'll ask the tower for permission to do a flyby, and then they kind of tell you what to do. So you'll do that like between cycles. And it's kind of fun when you get to do it, because everyone on the flight deck usually gets excited, and they're usually up there like working their asses off all day, so it's nice to kind of give them something to smile about.
The old aircraft carriers were straight ships, but today we can see that the deck has a small angle. This is precisely to allow for landings and takeoffs at the same time, safely. With the old aircraft carriers, if a pilot approached badly and needed to go back into the air, did he have to dodge the planes that were parked in front? Absolute madness, and there were many accidents, and that's why the deck of today's aircraft carriers has a slight angle. If a plane arrives with damage to the landing gear or hydraulic system, it cannot be guaranteed that the landing gear or hook have deployed properly. There is a system on the aircraft carrier that consists of a net about 6 meters high that deploys from the deck in a couple of minutes. The plane hooks onto the net, which slows it down using hydraulics. The net is replaced after each use. This concludes the first part covering essential aspects of aircraft carrier operations. In the next video, we will talk about the most interesting thing of all, the tasks on deck, and we will explain these dances. Greetings, subscribe if you are not, and thank you very much for watching me.